come and share your story tonight. I also want to give a special thank you before we start to the Rockland High School Parent Teacher Club and the community organizers who made this happen. And as importantly, so that you can hear them, thank you to Ryan O'Donnell and Sean Spees and his crew, so that having all the technical awareness. My name is Mike Tissell. If you're not aware, I am a news reporter, anchor, outdoor segment producer for KCRA 3 Television. I'm going to be serving as the moderator for tonight's forum. And before we begin, let me just kind of explain the ground rules and some explanations for how things are going to work. Because once we begin, each candidate is going to be given the opportunity to give a 3-minute opening statement. And then after that, the candidate's going to be asked a series of 5 questions that have all been submitted ahead of time to them. The way this is going to work, so that we can make it fair, is that we're going to rotate through. So Jennifer will start with the opening statement. When we get to the questions, Derek, you will go first, and we will continue to rotate that way. Everyone has a chance to go first and or last, and everyone will be stuck in the middle as well. A reminder for those in the audience, this is not a debate. Same thing to the candidates. This is a forum so that we can get to know the candidates and their outlook and perspective on being a school board member. So there will not be that typical back and forth rebuttal if you are used to having a debate. After that process, depending on how much time we have available, because we're going to try and keep this to 6 to 8 o'clock, we will be then offering questions they have not seen submitted by the audience. If you would like to submit a question to be vetted, there is a table in the back, or Lisa will be walking around. If you have a question, then please write it down on the program that you were given, and she will come around and grab those. But please do that in the first 15 minutes so that we can get that process ready for when we get to that point in time. At approximately 7:30, 7:40-ish, that's when we're going to kind of close down the questions and move to the closing statements for each of the candidates. And again, it's going to continue with the same rotating, so whoever's turn it is, that will be the candidate who will go first, and then who will go last. For the candidates, again, a reminder that this is not a debate. Please be courteous and respectful of each other as you're giving your answer. Allow them the same equal opportunity as you would prefer to have when it is your moment to speak. For the audience, consider this forum, as I like to say when I referee soccer games or football games, we're on a school campus. This is an extension of the school classroom. So when it comes to sitting and soaking this in and listening and observing, don't behave in a way that you would not want your child to behave during class as the teacher is teaching. That's the easiest way to basically say, let's all get along and enjoy listening to what the candidates have to say. And while I don't expect that's going to be a problem for anyone, I do have to give the disclaimer that anyone who can't abide by simple rules of respect and decorum may be asked to leave. Lastly, as a moderator, I do think it's very important to stress that I am a journalist who is here on a volunteer basis. I'm not getting anything to be here. I'm doing this as a community service. As a journalist, I am not going to be endorsing any of these candidates regardless of their answers, neither publicly nor privately, and I have never committed time or financial resources to any political candidacy or organization in my 50 years of journalism and community service. So with that, let's dive in and get to know the candidates better. So we are going to go in alphabetical order, and candidates, just so you know, I have a small little timer here that you will know when your time is up, when it sounds like the alarm has gone off and it is time to get up. So, Jennifer, please, start us off.
Thank you. So for 23 years as a public school educator and counselor, I'm experienced at helping all families get the education, resources, and support they need. In addition, I have my principal certification and served as a member of the negotiations team with teachers and my school district. I have also currently worked with students who are first generation, and for those who don't know what that means their parents were not born here, don't have a college education here, so I work with juniors and seniors right now, mainly with college essays. As a Rockland School District parent, I participate in the district's Diversity Inclusion Committee, the Local Control and Accountability Plan, also known as LCAP, and I am on Valley View Elementary School Site Council. I also volunteer in both of my kids' classrooms. I am personally vested in the success of our community as a Rockland resident and a mom with young kids in our school district. The success of our students is our greatest priority. Students know what is keeping them from being successful, yet their input is rarely utilized. My approach as an educator is student-centered. As a board member, I will make decisions that put students' best interests at the forefront. With my experience in education for over 2 decades, I have intimate knowledge about how school districts operate, and I understand a school board's role in working with the district, the County Board of Education, and the state. As a parent, I value the work that our teachers and staff do each and every day for our kids. I see how my kids' teachers take care of my children as if they were their own. From the office staff, to the custodians, to the cafeteria workers, to the principal, everyone who comes in contact with my kids has clearly shown that they truly care about students. I appreciate and value all of these roles and will prioritize open dialogue. I'm a former teacher and know what it takes to show up for our kids every day. It is important to me that teachers know that they are valued, appreciated, and supported. My background in education is a huge asset to Rockland Unified. More importantly, I am a mom, and what the school board does has a direct impact on my kids and our family. This is my why. This is my purpose. My focus will be on
Derek County.
Thank you. My wife Sarah and I, as just like most of you, moved to Rockland, California here to be in a great community with high quality schools for our children. After serving as a volunteer, as a coach across this community, I ran for the school board in 2018 and was honored to continue to serve here. As a trustee, my focus has been on doing what's best for every child in our schools. We safely reopened schools for full-time in-person education ahead of most other districts in California. We improve the relationships and the communication with our teachers, key to developing and implementing solutions that are best for all of our Rockland students. We continue to advance student safety and promote mental health and support services, again, for all of our students. I will continue to support financial policies that provide outstanding return on community's investment in our schools. We will maintain conservative fiscal policy. From a fiscal standpoint, short term, we want to continue to improve learning loss supports. For medium term, we want to continue our work on math and ELA improving achievement. And then, again, in the long term, zero debt, no long-term deficit spending, and then maintain that 3% reserve so that we can handle any unexpected expectation, anything unexpected that comes out. Again, we saw that recently. I will continue to press for local control so that Rockland decisions are made by Rockland parents, Rockland teachers, and district leadership. I support efforts to improve our math and our language arts, as we said before, increasing participation in career technical education, which is core, promoting Rockland as a great place to raise a family. As a school board member, we will establish direction and priorities, and we'll create those opportunities to communicate so that all our people in our community can get to know the teachers, can get to know the staff, and everyone can get to know the parents. Thank you.
Carrie Hamilton.
Hi there, my name is Carrie Hamilton. I'm a parent, small business owner in town. I grew up in Placer County, graduated from Oakmont High School, and then went to Cal Poly and got my accounting degree. My family relocated here in 2011. I have 3 children. One graduated from Whitney in 2021. One is currently a junior at Whitney High School, and one is a 7th grader at a charter school. If elected, I would like to continue to close the learning gap created by COVID and distance learning. I would like to expand our CTE programs for our high schoolers, giving them a more of a real-world experience that they can bring forward to what they want to do in their career. I would like to improve school choice options for students and not a one-size-fits-all for everybody. And I would like to explore the possibility of a wellness center on our high school campuses similar to Roseville. The top needs of that I can see of Rockland Unified, I think we need more tutoring opportunities. Like I said, with the learning loss, I think there's a definite need for that. I'm going to speak more to that in some of our prepared questions. But and I think there's a need for education of parents. I think Rockland Unified has a lot of services that we don't even know about. I've learned firsthand about, back to the tutoring opportunities that I didn't even know about, intervention preparing your student to go to college? How do you apply to college? What's the difference between AP and dual enrollment? How does that affect them as they're applying to college? What do colleges expect? Additionally, what is available for mental health? Until I was running for the board, I didn't even know we contracted with Wellness Together. I had no idea, and I think there's a lot of parents out there that don't even know we actually have a mental health program. What do I feel the roles and responsibilities of a trustee are? I think that as a trustee, we need to understand the needs of parents and teachers in order to provide the premier education that Rockland Unified has been recognized for. And budgeting priorities, we currently have a balanced budget, the way I understand from what I've been told. And so maintaining that balanced budget while still providing the needs of our students. I think the budget transparency is critical. Parents should know where their taxpayer dollars are going, and teachers and program leaders should know how the money their schools and programs have been given are being spent. That way all stakeholders can understand the inner workings in order to make decisions that are best for our students. Just like an accountant needs to provide a financial report to investors and partners, a school district should do the same for its stakeholders. So I hope to be that for all of you.
Rick Miller.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Rick Miller. I'm running for re-election school, and I'm currently on the school board. So, like most of you, I think I moved here 20 years ago, as Derek was saying, because of the high quality of the schools, because of the high quality of the community, and it was a place that I wanted to raise my children. And I think that's what brought most of us to Rockland. And it's been everything I hoped it would be. We had a wonderful experience raising our children here. And as my kids got older, I thought to myself how I could give back, what I could do to make a difference. And what became clear to me is education was my best way to do it. And the reason is my entire career has been in public education. 30 plus years I worked for the Federal Department of Education, I worked for the California Department of Education, and now I work running a nonprofit whose sole job it is to help large districts work together and learn from each other. So literally, I spend every day thinking about how districts get better and actually learning where it's working, where it's not, and then trying to bring those to other places. And as I'm thinking that's what I do, I knew I could make a difference in Rockland. That's what made me run, and in fact, over 4 years, I'm glad to say it's been quite successful. I've brought new policies on achievement and collaboration to the district they didn't have before. We've done some high quality training and coaching that didn't exist before, but that I brought to Rockland, some data infrastructure and data conversations, and how to think around data that didn't exist before, all from areas that I learned around the state that were working and made a difference now. And I can demonstrably say the kids in Rockland are better off because they're getting this high expertise from around the state. I know I can continue to do that, and that's what really brings me here today and why I'm running for re-election. I want to talk about my priorities. I have priorities around safety and personalized learning and parent involvement, and like Carrie was saying, we'll talk about that later. But the thing I want to, with my limited time left, I want to talk about is who's supporting me, because I do think it says a lot about who I am, who's around me, and who's part of this effort. And I have a member of the city council, I have a member of the board of supervisors, the superintendent of instruction for Placer County supports me, the former superintendent of Rockland Schools that helped both our schools supports me. And so I have this wide back, but more importantly, I have significant educator support, dozens, in fact, more teachers support me than any candidate in history, I think probably ever in Rockland. And there's a reason for that. It's because I work hard to make sure I understand what's happening in the classroom. I deeply believe the job of a board member is not sitting on the dais making decisions on school board meetings. That's a small part. The real work is the day-to-day in the classroom, understanding what's happening in our system. Rarely a week goes by I'm not in our classrooms. Spending times I substitute in our classrooms so I can understand the impact of our policy. I spend time with our principals walking classrooms to understand their leadership perspective. I spend a lot of time in our central office looking at our data and understanding how it's impacting kids. And it's because of that effort, it's because of really bringing folks together. And when you talk, if you look at my website, rickforrockland.com, you'll see quotes from teachers. And the theme you'll see most is, I don't always agree with Rick, but he always hears what I have to say, and he always listens. And I think that perspective would allowed me actually to get both the Chamber of Commerce endorsement and the Sacramento Bees endorsement. I'm the only one up here that's got both. And I think the reason is because I work hard to hear multiple perspectives, and I hope I continue to talk about that tonight.
Tiffany Sejob.
Well, good evening. When our schools closed in 2020, I saw the devastating effects on our students and on our community. So to ensure student needs are put first, I ran for office to take action. Elected to the Rockland School Board in November 2020, I brought the necessary change needed to protect our students and their education. In 2020, our schools looked very different than they do today. Enrollment was declining in the hundreds, the district was deficit spending, and concerns over curriculum were increasing. Immediately following election, I took action. I kept my promise to safely reopen schools full day, 5 days a week. I helped author new board policy to increase curriculum transparency. I also balanced the budget with no deficit spending while also restoring classroom funding and increasing teacher compensation and increased school choice options for families like our new dual language program at Corey Trail Elementary. In 2020, we had expired contracts with our teachers and threats of strike. But after much work the last 2 years, we now, for the first time in years, have settled positive contract negotiations with no labor contract disputes or strife. The last 2 years haven't been easy, but I'm proud of the great work we have done together. Moving forward, I'm committed to ensuring student needs are put first. I will work to close academic learning gaps, expand career tech options, and ensure school safety. That includes supporting mental health. I'm dedicated to increasing personalized learning, school choice options, and supporting parents as the primary decision makers for their children. I attended Rockland schools as a child and am now raising my family here. With my oldest being a graduate of Rockland High and my middle being a current RUSD student, I have experience with both elementary and secondary schools. And with a little guy just almost old enough to enroll in kindergarten, I'm here for at least 13 more years, so I'm not going anywhere. And I'm invested in the future of our schools. Having worked in Rockland the last 16 plus years, I have extensive relationship with city leaders and a long background of serving our community. I've worked with and endorsed by community, business, and education leaders like Mayor Bill Halden, Vice Mayor Kim Broadway, Council members Greg Jonda, Paul Rucola, Placer County Board of Education trustees I've worked with like Dave Patterson and Andrew Tagg, and multiple Rockland business owners, including the Rockland Chamber. A well-connected trustee is critical to the success of our schools. I know Rockland, it's my home. I shop at the same stores you shop at, I play at the same parks with my kids that you play at. Tonight, I'm excited to share with you my plans to build on the great excellence that is Rockland. Thank you.
Michelle Sutherland.
Thank you, and thanks again to the PCC parents that put this very important event on for our community. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you all a little bit about what brings me here tonight. So I grew up here in Rockland. I moved here when I was 5, and I started kindergarten here, graduated at Rockland High School, just had my 20-year reunion. And then I went on to UC Davis and then Sac State for grad school, lived life a little bit, got married, and my husband and I made the decision to move here to Rockland because this is a community that we wanted to raise our family in. And we had a little one, almost 1 year old, and we knew that we wanted to put the kids in school here. I had an excellent experience in Rockland schools. I think that my experience here really helped set me up to move on to bigger and better things and have great successes, and I want that similar experience for my own kids. So right now I have 3 kids in Rockland Unified. I have a 5th grader, Adair, who's in 5th grade at Rockland Elementary in the GATE program. I have an 8-year-old Remy who's in 3rd grade at Parker Whitney. That's our home school and the school that I went to. And then we have a TKer, Marin, who's at Corey Trail in the Spanish immersion program. I had gone to a multicultural preschool, and we thought it would really make a lot of sense for her. And I'm very fortunate that Rockland Unified has so many excellent options for us, and we've been able to find one that works for each of our kids. Currently, I'm on a PTC board for Remy's school, and I'm also event chairs for some events on a couple of campuses. I volunteer at school as much as I can, even though I do work full-time now. I do as much as I can. And I take part in district parent advisory committees whenever I can. So I've taken part in the local control and accountability plan for the last several years, which has taught me a lot about how we spend a certain subset of our budget that's for our unduplicated students here. I've been part of an events committee that brings different awareness events to our campuses. So for Black History Month, for individuals with disabilities. We've just worked on Hispanic Heritage Month, so that's been very exciting. And also taking part in the district safety committee meetings whenever I can as well. So for me, I am in these schools all the time. I have relationships with the teachers. I know what's going on. For my career, I work in the Roseville Joint Union High School District as a board-certified behavior analyst on 3 different campuses. And so that means that I'm going into special education classrooms every day, working with students to help them achieve their goals, training teachers and staff on how to help them to be successful, work through behaviors so they can be as fully included in classrooms as possible. Also going into general education classes, helping with behaviors there, training general education teachers who may not have a lot of knowledge about working through behaviors. Thank you. Wow. That gets
Thank you, candidates. So now we're going to move on to the questions, and in an effort to try and get in as many questions from the audience as possible, we would like to strive for answers that are about 90 seconds long, no more than 2 minutes. I am a visual learner, so if you're a visual learner like me and you need a visual cue, once you start answering your question, I will sit down. When you get to 90 seconds, I will stand up. If you keep talking for more than 30 seconds, you will hear the time to get up in the morning alarm. All right? So with that, let's begin with the questions that, again, were supplied to the candidates ahead of time. And I would like to start with student-generated questions since we are on a student campus. So Derek Counter, you will be answering first. And the question is a rather simple one from a Rockland High School student, and that is, what will you do as trustee to keep students safe?
So this is it's a tough one when you look at it, because safe is a pretty broad term, and it needs to include a lot of parameters. So from a drug standpoint, social media standpoint, hate speech, extreme and even gun violence. So we're trying to look at all these different perspectives. I think from a drug standpoint, we've all seen the recent events with the One Pill Can Kill and the fentanyl that has come into Placer County, and we lost a great student at Whitney High School, Zach Didier, and his family's done a great job with that One Pill Can Kill campaign and really got it out there. And I think their efforts have really saved lives in our area. So from a safety standpoint, we continue to support that, and we look forward to helping that extend. Social media, and we have anti-harassment, and the bullying, and we go through the training with that. We want to really reduce that and minimize that as much as possible. From a hate speech standpoint, we have a zero tolerance policy for any discrimination towards race, religion, gender, and any of those beliefs. Like, we do not want any of that. And I know our teachers have done a great job promoting that and keeping that constant on the mind. So again, our kids are safe here and in campus. And then from the gun standpoint or extreme events on campus, we've had a program called Run, Hide, Fight. We've trained folks, we've trained teachers in that, and we really want to continue to promote that. Again, we want to make sure everyone on campus is safe, teachers, students, everybody. It's a broad term, but we're looking at that. I think best practices are constantly evolving. We need to continue to revisit and improve any of those practices on those kind of things. Pre-preparedness, teaching to assess situations, surroundings. So things like, again, when we were all kids, you did fire drills, you did earthquake drills. We need to do, we're going through, and it's a tough part, we need to do lockdown drills. What happens if something happens on campus? What do? We need to have that training. We will continue to promote the see something, say something agenda. We want to have support. We want to support safe schools. We want those kids to communicate out.
That is how quickly 2 minutes goes by. Same question, Carrie Hamilton.
Currently, I actually took safety as just the actual physical safety of our students. So, but those were great points also. Currently, our district is doing a great job working with the local police to ensure the safety of our students. Over the summer, they were able to do an active shooter training on the Granite Oaks campus. They were able to have student volunteers attend the training to make it more realistic. I think expanding that program would benefit our teachers and police to give them practice responding in a real-life scenario. At the beginning of each year, Rockland PD presents Run, Hide, Fight to all schools in the district to train students and teachers how to respond in an active shooter scenario. Currently, each campus in the district has its own safety plan that is put together by that campus's safety committee. That plan is then reviewed by the PD to be approved. This is, again, back to what I said in my intro, letting teachers know, something I had no idea our campuses did. So I think even putting that out to parents so that they know what is the plan for our school. Because I can remember when we were in an elementary school, there was 2 ways you could get out, and we'd always tell our kids, okay, run to this person's house that you know lives over there. You know that direction, because you can't just say left or right. You just gotta, go to that person's house, or you go to this person's house, wherever you are. So communicating those safety plans with our parents. And then if elected, I would like to bring more training to staff and students regarding acts of violence on school grounds to further enhance the knowledge base of all.
Great. So
Go ahead, Rick. Rick Miller.
Mike, have a seat. So I actually think, I appreciate it, and I think this is the most important thing that comes before a trustee, which is if our kids are not safe on campus, there's no way they learn, there's no way they succeed. So it has to be the priority of any board, and I think it is ours. And so we talk a little about what I've done and what I'll do. So first of all, we significantly increased our training and partnership with Rockland PD. We're in a very good place right now with both fire and PD. In addition, I worked really hard, and I'm super proud that we have significantly increased mental health counselors. Because making sure kids feel safe, but also that they feel safe both from an outside perspective, but also from the bullying and inside perspective. And you have to do that, so we're working with kids across the board. We updated Run High Five, which is mentioned multiple times. Now on campus, all of our classrooms are locked because we learned that was the best practice across the state. It's horrible things we have to deal with. We have to learn what works and make sure that we're adjusting. And then finally, we adopt a new social emotional learning curriculum that talks to kids. It helps kids think about how you build self-esteem, how you think about bullying, how you engage with others, and helps teachers, gives teachers ways into having conversations, different conversations with kids about bullying, and we're better for it. Going forward, I think the main thing is I want to continue to work with Rockland PD to create a robust threat assessment. We have a pretty good idea of where the best practices are across the country, but we need to look here in Rockland and understand what is our most likely areas of concern, and then make sure we're adjusting. And then train our teachers, train our staff, train our students, so everyone knows how to respond here in Rockland if, God forbid, something horrible will happen. In my superintendent meetings across the state, I'm regularly in a meeting with the former superintendent of San Bernardino Unified, and he spent length talking to me about what happened when there was a shooting there. And so he's actually written a book about how to deal with it and how to think about protecting your students before and, God forbid, afterwards. And so I've hooked him up with our superintendent. We're having conversations to learn from what actually has worked around the state. The final thing is I think it's important that we have strong schools. So one thing I want to do, I want to increase the number of cameras we have in our schools, but I want to tie them directly to the Rockland PD, so they have the ability to say, so again, if something happens, they can see it and they can respond to it. Thanks.
Tiffany Satoff, sorry.
Thank you. Yes, I appreciate this question because a lot of the conversations I'm having are centered around safety. What will you do as a trustee to protect my students? What will you do as a trustee to protect me as a student? And so I appreciate that. And so I want to share a little bit about this last year and conversations that I've had and some of the actions that we've taken. It was by my request that we set up a student committee. We do hear from students, but we felt as trustees we weren't able to really truly hear from students in an environment that was conducive to them being open and sharing their concerns with us. And through that committee, me and another trustee were able to sit down and ask them, how are you feeling? How do you feel on campus? Because we received data and we shared that data with them. Our LCAP survey tells us that parents actually increased 6%, saying that, hey, I feel like my children are more safe at school right now. We received data, our California Healthy Kids survey told us there's an increase in school connectedness and caring adult relationships. But that data doesn't mean much if we're not able to actually sit down and talk with the students and actually extrapolate that from them and say, so how do you actually feel? And so in that student committee, it was very interesting because we started as trustees to share with them. So look, we purchased this new curriculum, we have SEL, we're taking these great strides. And I love that one student actually said, is it okay if I be honest with you? I said, yes, please do. This is why we're here. He said, I'm concerned. I don't think it's doing what you guys want it to do. And I felt like that was a very important conversation for us to have with these students. And so we started to unpack that a little more and ask them to go back to their schools, talk to their student body classes, talk to the students on campus and say, well, then what can we do? What are the real concerns? And what came back was concerns about physical safety. What came back was concerns about mental health. What came back was that they want bully-free, harassment-free zones, instruction-free from political persuasion. But the one that I really didn't pick up on until they told me was stress management. There were students that said, I need help with stress management, and you may not think of that as safety. Oh, that went really fast. We have 2 more.
I think you will be able to address that in another one of the prescribed questions in a moment. Michelle Sutherland.
Thank you. So school safety is a huge topic that comes up in conversations that I'm having in the community. I was fortunate to be able to go to the District Safety Committee last week and hear about what's going on currently and also help to generate ideas of what still needs to be happening in our schools. So one thing that became very clear was that there isn't a budget to put a giant fence around every campus in Rockland Unified, and so we're looking at practical ways to increase safety on campuses. And what we ended up talking about was the locked door policy that was already mentioned, but also making sure that communication is strong. So getting more walkies for staff that are out on campus. There were actually staff there that weren't really up to date on how the emergency system works and where that goes and what the response time is. So there's definitely training that needs to happen there. There was discussion about how to continue to improve. Some of our older campuses are very open. There are a lot of entry and exit points. And there are some cameras, but they're not necessarily, well, they're definitely not in real time. So they're not letting staff know who's coming on and off of campus. I think we can improve that, and it sounds like it's feasible to do so. Also looking at ways to just bring maybe more Rockland PD presence in the community, just cruising by, being an extra set of eyes. They were also there, and that was something, you know, that we talked about as well. And then school safety extending even to kids getting on and off of campus. I see that my time's running out. But you would be surprised how many parents are very concerned about their kids not having crosswalks that are staffed, having cars going back and forth that aren't following traffic laws. And so if we can't staff those properly, how do we come together as a community, get the parent volunteers? I know there's motivation to keep the kids safe, and I know that we can work together and pull these ideas together. Thank you.
Jennifer Brooke.
So too often we don't ask our students, what does it mean for you to feel safe? Does it have to do with gun violence? Is it because you're being bullied or you're being harassed? Is it because you have stressors at home, something's going on with your friends? We don't ask the students, and we don't ask the specific things that they would need to make them feel safe. As a counselor, I understand that all these stressors exist, and we need to do specific things as trustees to have clear strategies and solutions to make sure all of our students feel valued and heard. It's also important to provide resources and support to parents to be clear and proactive with our communication. When I was a counselor in Pennsylvania, one of the teams that we had was called the Student Assistance Program Team, SAP for short, all those educational acronyms. And we consisted of a counselor, a social worker, a teacher, a principal, and sometimes when a parent could come and parent. Referrals could be made by students, by staff, by teachers, by anyone in the community if they saw that a student was hanging out with a different friend group, that they maybe lost a lot of weight, that their behavior had changed. You know, those are the signs that the teachers on the front line see each and every day, our nurses, our counselors, and our teachers. So that team is something that we could implement across the district. We need a crisis response team at each school and district-wide so that everybody has a role on the team to know exactly what we need to do if, God forbid, something does happen, so we're being proactive rather than reactive. I was on one of those crisis response teams, so I would be able to implement that in the school district. And the last thing I do want to mention is that I had the honor of being a Moms Demand Action Gun Sense candidate, and the threat and fear of gun violence in schools is very real. There's legislation that's passed that school districts in California must provide information to all families and students regarding gun safety. My experience working in the classroom and working with students during these traumatic and stressor events, I have that experience and can help implement that as a school board member.
Consistent theme through the first question, the opening statements, was addressing mental health. So I'd like to move on to a question about that, and that is that mental health challenges are a growing area of concern for students. What role do you see a trustee playing in finding solutions for this growing concern? Karen.
From talking with teachers and administrators, what our students need is more counselors and therapists. There are several social workers on the campuses, but a social worker can only dictate what resources the student needs. The district needs more of the actual counselors and therapists to do the work with the students. Our schools have contracted with Wellness Together for mental health, and from what I understand, there is always a waiting list at the high school level. I wasn't able to reach a therapist at the junior high level. Whitney High School, for example, has one therapist on campus Tuesday through Friday. Each therapist can have a caseload of 5 students per day. That's 20 slots for a student population of 2,000. That is likely not enough. There's currently, like I said, there's a wait list. The number one thing they're seeing is anxiety, which I think we can all relate to, trying to deal with just the day-to-day, how to balance everything. Even as grown-ups, we have that. The other thing they're seeing is 75% of their kids seen are from divorced families and are seeking help to navigate those issues. The therapist I spoke with said it would be incredible if there could be a group session for families of divorce to help them navigate the changes that happen. Therapists are seeing kids take on responsibilities in home, they have school, parents are leaning on them, etc. Group therapy sessions could help families navigate all of this. If elected, I would also like to look into the possibility of creating a wellness center on our high school campuses like Roseville has done. In those wellness centers, there are multiple therapists and the students can self-refer. So then you reach the population of kids that are high functioning but still need that mental health aspect in their life that maybe a teacher isn't going to see them to point that out and refer them. I saw him stand up and like out of the corner of my eye, it threw me. A 24/7 call line is also in the works from the district. They did receive a grant of $115,000 from, I believe it was from the city, that I think would be incredible that students can have that access anytime, any day of the week to call and get the help that they need. The huge help, there it goes.
This is just a growing problem, certainly here in Rockland and across the country. And it's different than when I went to school when we were kids. It's something we need to really think differently about and pay attention to. And it feels like we've made some real strides. We've significantly increased the number of mental health counselors in our schools. And the good news is it's actually made a difference. We can demonstrably show the kids are better served and it's having impact. So we know it works and we know it's the way to sort of move forward. We are in a tough spot because we don't have unlimited dollars and we have to make hard decisions. And so I also do want to increase. I'm not sure how to do it, and I think it's going to be a hard conversation we're going to have to go forward. Is what is it we would cut to make it, and how can we actually best utilize limited resources to make sure that we're paying attention to mental health issues. The other ways are continued investments in things like our curriculum, and I agree completely, especially the secondary level. Our SEL curriculum was not as well received as we wish it was. It actually did pretty well in the elementary level, but we're not done. It was the beginning, and so this is what good, high-quality educators do. They adapt, they learn, they get better, and we're in the process of doing that. We have great programs like Breaking Down the Walls at our high schools that actually make a difference, and I would tell you, I actually believe the most important thing you could do for mental health of a child is connections, it's relationships. They want to feel included when they come to a school. They want to feel connected. So if they have a best friend in school, that's enough. That could be enough. If they're connected to a teacher, if they're connected to a program, it's that desire to be there that we need to really double down on and build on to make kids feel like they're part of our schools. I would tell in my day job, I'm working on a thing called a Kid Talk protocol where we're almost done with it. We have demonstrated success with it, where we have teachers work with kids and they actually look at every kid in the classroom and they figure out who has relationships, who doesn't, and then they help them create them. Those types of different ways of thinking about it, those are free ways that we can put in our system now and create more connections.
With the second to spare. Tiffany.
When it comes to mental health, I am so thankful that our LCAP really does a deep dive on this. Our second goal, when you start looking at our LCAP, that is showing our community this is where we are putting our dollars, that this is important. This is one of the top 3 priorities for our district. And our LCAP survey, actually, as we looked at the data that came in, it asked for 2 specific things from us as trustees. It asked for greater access to local mental health resources and increased parent education, trauma-informed care, not only for parents, but for teachers. And I thought that was great that we were seeing students, parents, and teachers all saying the same thing. I'm sure there's great resources out there, but we don't know about them. Please help us connect to them. And so we did that. We actually brought on social workers for the first return for school, and then we found that parents were saying, I just need to know what the resources are and connect me. And so now we have Care Solace, which 365 days a year, parents, teachers are able to access this call line, and it'll actually connect them with the resources right in their area. So we're not looking at 3 months, 6 months waits with our physicians. We're able to get the mental health resources to students and teachers immediately. Additionally, I wanted to talk a little bit about breaking down the walls. Funding is a difficult piece, right? We want to do everything, but we found that funding cannot be a reason that we don't provide mental health resources. And so I actually worked really hard to work with REEF, our Education Foundation, to secure funding for us to actually be able to increase our breaking down the walls components. Breaking down the walls is critical because it covers 3 really important mental health areas: emotional regulation, dealing with grief and loss, and substance abuse prevention. Those are the 3 areas our students told us they needed help in, and so we found the money. I found the money meeting with REEF. In addition, there are creative solutions such as a $115,000 grant we just secured from the city to make sure that we put that money towards mental health to give them access to those resources and increase our parent trauma-informed care. Thank you.
Michelle.
Thank you. So I think we all agree that mental health has been a big topic of conversation among students and parents. And being that I do work in Roseville Joint on 3 different high school campuses, I see the impact that these wellness centers have for students and for teachers as well. Students can go in to a location on site staffed by district employees, social workers, mental health workers, and they can stop in between classes. They can be sent out for a break by their teachers at any time, so they can really get the help when they need it. And I think that's really important, that students, when they're in that mode of being in a crisis, they can find that in a timely manner. And by having district staff, these people are able to build relationships with the students, get to know them. The students can just stop in and say hi. And then they can act as a triage for these students when you see a behavior change that isn't typical. Is there something going on? Does a risk assessment need to take place? And then they can either notify the parents or get some other district support to notify the child and parent that there's some more support for them so that they don't fall through the cracks. There is a need for addressing bullying on our campuses that goes beyond PBIS. This is something that many parents have talked to me about, and some have even left the district over it, feeling that their concerns weren't heard, the bullying wasn't resolved. We need to find a way to really come together as a community and find a way to have a common shared interest in what we're going to accept and not accept in the district, and make sure that, that those things are followed through on. So really with mental health, I think it's just a matter of bringing that in. I learned recently from a teachers meeting that our counselors on our secondary campuses are spread so thin, they're not getting that face time with students that they really need to help keep them focused and on track. How do we get more hours of counselors so that those students have someone to contact?
So for a district with close to 12,000 students, we currently do not have any social workers on campus. There was a grant last year that hired 4 social workers. I sat on the LCAP Parent Advisory Committee, and I asked, when that grant is over, then what? And I didn't get a response. They did not hire any social workers. Social workers are key in that triage that my colleague Michelle was talking about, for the fact that they are there to help the counselors, they're there to help the teachers, and they're there to help the parents. They're there to get the families the resources. I see a fellow social worker in the audience, and I remember working with her in the fact that when I was counseling a student, she was talking to the parent, or vice versa, that we were able to help out with that. Kids cannot be successful academically or in any way if they're experiencing fundamental insecurity at home, if they're dealing with that bullying and harassment, if they have food insecurity or abuse or grief or any kind of conflict. So we do need to find the money. We need to find the money and have full-time district employees, not people that are contracted from outside of Rockland Unified, so they can build those positive relationships and that rapport with our students. I'm a counselor. I had 250 students on my caseload in Pennsylvania, and I came here and I found out that California counselors have on average 500 plus students, including our counselors here at Whitney High School and Rockland. There is absolutely no way you can get to know your students on that kind of intimate level. You cannot be proactive to help them out, to work with the teachers, and to have those connections. We need parent resources and info nights ongoing, not after an event. being proactive to prevent the events that put us into crisis. Support groups like grief groups run by certified counselors and social workers, a mental health elective, and talking about it more so we can destigmatize so people can ask for help. Thank you.
So I think it was brought up a couple times here, and the theme is continuing. It's that communication. I mean, with mental health, you got to get people to talk through any issues they have, whether it be personal, family, and I think that communication is key. A couple of years ago, our community was shut down, and that reduced the opportunity for our kids to connect and communicate in person. Students were told to be resilient, and we went through all the challenges with that. So as you guys know as parents, not every child, or every opportunity to grow up, to mature, to learn occurs on time or as planned. There's things that just happen in life, and they happen sometimes earlier for kids, later for kids. So getting those students back in person and in-person education created the opportunities, the events, and the situations to create that communication. So it's kid-to-kid communication, teacher-to-student communication, teacher-to-custodial communication, principals, etc. People got to talk and work through things. Right? So moving forward, we will assess the risks as appropriate. We'll create those programs to allow those kids to relieve the help, to receive the help they may need. Right? The district will support and can help to determine the types of support. Sometimes kids just need to talk to an adult. Sometimes need peer coaching or peer counseling. Sometimes you got to talk to your friends or maybe have a little group to communicate with. And sometimes need professional services. Right? There's not a one-size-fits-all to mental health and those things. We will need to have plans to accommodate any of the things. So reattaching to the communities, clubs, events, sports, gives those opportunities for those kids to do that. Communicating with an adult about maybe a family issue, something going on. Group counseling to share any frustrations, is peer group time. Wellness Together coaching appointments that we have within the district. Again, in breaking down the walls, thank you to Reeve for continuing to support that. Those are great opportunities for kids to be involved, to have that communication and talk through things with each other. And understand that, hey, it's not just me, it's a lot of us or a few of us, but we have the same issues going on.
Let's move into the classroom, so to speak. And Rick, we'll start with you. What roles and responsibilities do you believe a trustee has in supporting state curriculum standards? With that, what are your views on the curriculum standards relating to social studies, ethnic studies, and the California Healthy Youth Act?
Thanks. So I do think curriculum is actually probably one of the most important things that a school board does. It directly relates to the classroom, it drives instruction. And so it's something you have to pay a lot of attention to. I will be honest, I was a little thrown by this question because the three examples they use, social science, health, and ethnic studies, none of it are going to be dealt with by this board in the next 4 years. We have a very specific process we go through to adopt. We adopted several years ago social science, that's not until 2028. Health education is not until 2029. Ethnic studies doesn't become a graduation requirement until 29-30. An example, I think our health curriculum is good. I'm very happy. I'm not going to change it. I don't want to open up early. So I'm comfortable with the curriculum we have now. I voted for the history of social science. I think it's good. It's being implemented well, and I'm happy with where we're going. So, but you asked me about curriculum, so I'm going to tell you what I think about curriculum. One area that I do want to see us focus on is when you look at our data, mathematics is an area that we struggle with in Rockland. And actually, when you get into the high school level, just over half of our kids are proficient in mathematics. And the reason mathematics matters a lot is because it teaches critical thinking skills. It teaches kids that if you can't get the answer, how do you think about it differently? How do you ultimately get there? And those skill sets of critical thinking are really important in today's economy. And so we as a society, and we in Rockland, need to think differently about how we build these skills. And it's a combination of critical thinking and problem solving. And also there's sort of a balance in the number sense of it and in the mathematics itself. And so let me give you an example. So if you look at algebra, and algebra is a critical gateway to higher level thinking at the secondary level. We find from research that the biggest reason kids are unsuccessful in algebra is because they actually don't know fractions. And they don't know how to apply fractions in algebra. It's that kind of raising up that we need to think different about Rockland. How do we actually teach kids both the number sense, but then how do we apply it? And we're doing great work. Rockland High School is doing some amazing work with building thinking classrooms. It started at Springview. There's some good elementary work. So we're on the right track, but we need to focus on giving teachers what they need in elementary curriculum. Thank
different things. One, because every student has a personal touch with our curriculum, but also two, curriculum, if we're honest, can sometimes be potentially divisive in our community. And part of our job as a trustee is to bring our community together and talk about what we need to accomplish and why we need to accomplish it. And I think in past years there was frustration over who gets to make decisions about curriculum and why. And so I actually spent a lot of my time researching that and figuring out as a parent. Before I ever had any desire to be a trustee, I sat on several different committees that looked at pieces of curriculum that Rockland had because I was confused as a parent and I wanted to know who actually makes the decisions and who as a parent do I actually need to talk to make sure I'm being heard. And so the reality is state legislature is ultimately responsible for the standards. We recognize that, we understand that. So the state legislature puts into effect, these are the academic standards that must be met. Off of that are curriculum frameworks that come. And this is where the point of confusion and I think tension comes. Those are suggested guidance. That is guidance of how a school district could adhere to the state framework, to the standard. But often what happens is districts use that framework, that guidance, and communicate it to parents as this is a requirement when that is absolutely not the case. It's the responsibility of the board to implement and develop curriculum to meet the state standards consistent with our local conditions and our local needs. And so I think these three areas that were brought up, social studies, the California Healthy Youth Act, which is our sex ed, and ethnic studies, I did too find it interesting that those were the three put in the question, so I'm going to try my best to answer all three of them. Social studies, I think the piece that was with that is, again, there is a misunderstanding with the social studies as to what we have to do. The state website, CDE itself, says it is up to local districts to determine how this instructional content is included, yet too much was included too soon. California Healthy Youth Act, our sex ed, I actually sat on our health committee, and I actually worked hard to have some of the lessons redacted that were not age appropriate. Our state of California actually says in the provisions 51931 that all curriculum must be age appropriate and it's permissible in grades K through 6, not required.
Michelle.
Thank you. So I did want to clarify, in part of the question, it does say, what do you believe the role and responsibility is in regards to curriculum? And it's not really about what I believe, because as mentioned, the California Department of Education lays out what the requirements for curriculum are, and also lays out that boards and school districts have the ability to implement those things at their discretion and with what fits for their district, which is what has happened here in Rockland. So I paid a lot of attention to the social studies curriculum when that was coming about. And the way that we follow laws and make it right for Rockland is really by drawing from the educators that we have here, these teacher professionals that work with our kids every day. Ask them if this is their area of expertise. Where should we be looking for curriculum? Find some options. Bring those to the table publicly, which is what's done, so parents and stakeholders can look over the information and have a voice and give their input and then make a decision. I had in my notes that these three areas, social studies, the ethnic studies, and the sex ed will not be addressed in this term that we're all running for right now. They will be in place for several more years as they are. I will say that with the ethnic studies, it is now an elective. Teachers and admin here at RHS worked really hard and put together an excellent syllabus that I looked over, and parents and their students can opt to sign up for that class if they so choose. So really what I want to focus on as a trustee is helping to steer the district in accordance with the strategic plan that the district has that's on the website, because that makes sure that our decisions and our actions really reflect the goals that have been set out that we have decided are important for helping to make sure that our kids get the best education possible. Another goal of mine as a trustee and responsibility is really, like we've talked about, the budget. It's making sure that we're making decisions.
We are a public school district, so we need to follow the California Department of Education. One of the main reasons I support all the curriculum standards is that they have been developed by educators who have the education, skill set, and expertise to create curriculum that will allow our students to think critically. I work with mainly juniors and seniors. They're going off to college. They need to be able to look at things from multiple perspectives, from diverse backgrounds, and maybe connect with people that don't look like them, that don't act like them, that maybe weren't brought up the same way as them in order to be successful in the work world as well as before the work. When they go off to college, they need to be successful with that. They need to see that there are multiple perspectives to people's history, to their race, their culture, their gender identity, and their upbringing. If our students are only taught one perspective of history and not all the aspects of historical events, then we're doing them a disservice as a knowledgeable citizen of this country. It's also our responsibility to support and promote the California Healthy Youth Act so students are receiving factual information for their physical health and safety. As a former English teacher, I know the importance of students having access to books. We as a public school district, we are a public school district, yet the American Evangelical Council, who endorses Ms. Sadoff, Ms. Hamilton, and Mr. Counter, are currently encouraging people to contact Rockland School District librarians at Whitney High School and Rockland High School to remove books from public libraries. This is a public school and a public school district. I'm curious if anyone has read the books, because I have read most of them that are on that list, and most of the characters are LGBTQ+ or other underrepresented groups. Book banning and censorship is not American. It goes against freedom of speech, freedom of expression, and again, it's not wanted or needed in a public school district. Thank you.
So, state curriculum, so there's a process. I mean, it goes from the state, usually goes to the county, and then it ends up at the school districts across the state of California. Teams in our district and in most districts, they have teacher teams that develop it, sit down, evaluate it, and we make a decision. We figure out what works best, and what works for our school district and our community. We can always make our own. I think that's been brought up before. But following the guidance, that's a lot of resources, that's a lot of money, that's a lot of time involved, and it would more than likely take teachers out of the classroom and put them into doing that. Great idea, great opportunities, I think we can look at that, but that's a balanced budget conversation, and that's a lot tougher to have. So we will continue to have curriculum transparency so that all of us, whether it be from a parent, from a student, we know the intent of the education and the curriculum that we're producing. We talked about social studies, as Rick was saying, none of these are going to be adopted by this board. We have good practices where parents can review and look at a weekly calendar and see what's going on. I think that was a great thing that was created with the social studies curriculum. Ethnic studies, so Rockland High School and Whitney High School has that an elective class that was developed by a teacher, that was submitted, reviewed, board reviewed, and was communicated to all. And I think that process allows the parents to avoid any assumptions and people to really understand, here's what it is and here's what it's not. And that's a good thing for everyone to understand and not come in with, well, I think this is going to happen, I think someone's trying to pull the wool over your eyes type thing. Sex ed, as we said, we have the state policy, we have a clear policy for parental approval. Kids can attend, kids can be included, excluded, parent decisions, and an opportunity to have that parent conversation about, do I want to be in that or do I not want to be in it? All the curriculum is available in our district office. Parents can discuss, they can talk with site staff, they can talk with teachers, they can talk with anybody and understand how the curriculum and what we have. Our communication can always improve. We continuously improve the communication around curriculum transparency so we avoid assumptions that could happen.
Thank you. Carrie?
When the state board rolls out curriculum standards, they also give a list of publishers that have curriculum that can be used and piloted. Staff then can pilot their chosen curriculum options and decide which curriculum they would like to present to the trustees for approval. It is the staff's responsibility to choose curriculum that is aligned with the state curriculum standards, and it's the trustees' job to vet that curriculum as it relates to the district based on current test results. They need to ask questions like, will the new curriculum improve test scores? Does the new curriculum help increase test scores, correct an issue with old curriculum, support our students? The trustees should also have a process in place which will allow time for parents to have an opportunity to research the curriculum that will be taught to their children as well. In regard to social studies, I believe it is important for students to understand the wide variety of events that have developed our history and our place in the world. I believe our students should be given a curriculum that is factual and based on actual events in the history of America and the world. The curriculum should be free from divisiveness and political bias. In regard to ethnic studies, I think it is important for our students to learn about different cultures, where each other are from, and how they all come together to create the community we live in. An ethnic studies curriculum should be kept objective and not teach kids that they need to believe one thing or another. It should merely be an education in the histories, experiences, and cultures of others. In regard to the California Healthy Youth Act, I believe the items in that curriculum are things our kids will eventually need to be taught. However, I believe it needs to remain the parents' choice as to when those topics are presented to their children. I know RUSD currently has a process in place that allows parents to participate and know what their child is exposed to. Parents can choose to view the materials being presented prior to instruction and can remove their student from instruction by submitting that request in writing.
All right, we're to question 4, correct, Rick? You already answered this question. All right, Tiffany, along the same lines, what roles and responsibilities do you believe trustees play in advancing appropriate academic interventions in both the general education classroom and the special education department?
Thank you. Yes, I believe this is critical for a trustee to talk about because actually one of my platform priorities is personalized learning. I've seen firsthand with a student who excelled in some subjects and a student who did not in others. And so I found that personalized learning is important because every student has different learning needs. We do this through acceleration and remediation. Oftentimes districts focus on one while forgetting the other. And so it's important that many of our students may never qualify for education, special education, but they still need our help in order to learn. They need tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 supports. We do this by budgetarily protecting learning recovery teacher and aides, which we've already added to every school, but it's important that we protect them as the years go on. We expand our school choice options beyond our IB at Sierra Elementary and our dual language. And also we continue to promote our Sierra College dual enrollment. There are still students that are unaware that they can actually be accelerating and completing college level units. Our special education, we've made great progress here. We still have some room to grow, especially around our teacher recruitment and retention. But we have seen a 25% decrease in special education staffing turnover. We've seen an increase in compliance. We've seen a decrease, 25% in legal cases, but the reality is we need to better fund it. We need to better fund what our special education teachers need. We need to better fund the cost of educating a student with disabilities is almost 3 times as much what the state provides us. It is the responsibility of the trustees to figure out how to make up that difference, and I'm committed to doing so. It's important that we invest in additional time and resources for teacher collaboration. We saw this last year when we did that with our board study sessions, when we changed the format of them and we allowed teachers to talk to each other and talk to us, we saw that we were actually seeing a marked improvement. And so I think it's important in both of these areas that we listen to our professionals, our teachers in the classroom, those that are working with the students. Thank you.
Michelle.
So in regards to this topic, as a trustee, I think the first step that you're going to take is to look at the data, look at the student testing outcomes, the student achievement, the assessments, and see where there are areas of need at that large scale. So math, I know, has been brought up here already. So then you find these areas of need and you go to the teachers that have specialized in those subjects and talk to them. Say, what are you noticing in your classrooms? Where are your students struggling? What supports do you need to help better teach these kids these topics? We have learning support teachers right now for ELA and for math. That's something that's come about since COVID. The district has received extra money due to COVID. That won't continue. So we really do need to figure out how to continue to keep these supports in place because this current board over the last 2 years hasn't really had to deal with these really difficult budgetary issues that are on the horizon. And we will need to keep those supports going for these kids. As far as special education, in my background, I've talked to many special education parents, worked with many kids over the years since I graduated college, and really a lot of it is the parents want to make sure that their concerns are heard and addressed and really taken seriously. So we need to look at how we're assessing these students. When a concern is brought by a teacher or by a parent, are we addressing it in a timely manner and getting the student the support they need, whether it is Tier 1 or Tier 2, or if it's a student with an IEP, Tier 3, and then figure out also what we can do to, bring other innovations into the classroom and improve our best practices to make sure that we can, for example, a parent brought up a dyslexia curriculum. That can be incorporated into a classroom with students who may have dyslexia and may not, and they can all benefit from it. We just need to have board trustees that are really open to looking at other ideas and what's working in other places, and we can learn from that.
School board trustees need to ensure that federal and state policies are being followed by all schools, and that administration as well as teachers are trained every year, since guidelines can change. There are specific processes that must be followed when addressing students' academic and social emotional needs, yet I hear from parents over and over and over again, it's not always the case depending on which school you're at, and that shouldn't matter because all schools in Rockland should be following the same state and federal guidelines, including the SST process. For those of you who don't know, again, all those crazy acronyms, that is the student service team. And again, we are getting referrals to make sure if students are not being successful in the classroom, what is the reason? Doesn't mean they automatically get an IEP or a 504, but we put those Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 interventions in place. I was a counselor for over 12 years. I was a teacher and taught special education students, so I've seen this firsthand. I was also a counselor on a special education team. We spent countless of hours making sure that we were in compliance. And one of the number one things that we did that is lacking in many school districts is communication with the parents. Letting them know what is going on, letting them know what this means. They don't know what the jargon is. We sometimes don't know what all the jargon is. So we have those conversations with them. We are upfront with them. We are part as a team, including the student. I jokingly would tell my high school students, you need to be a part of this. I'm coming up with all these interventions for you on your 504 plan, but does this work for you? So it goes back to what I mentioned earlier, talking to the student, talking to the parent, talking to the family, and adhering to that. It's essential as a board member that we know all these factors so that we aren't spending countless waste of money, thousands of dollars every year in lawsuits, and we are in compliance with those policies and those guidelines. Thank you.
Derek.
So the goal in this is to get kids well prepared for career and college ready. Right, so being a K-12 district, we have the opportunity to have those building blocks, that knowledge, those terms, that education is built on foundational learning. You learn as you grow, learn as you go, right? It's great working with the staff and the teachers on continuous improvement and continue to promote that and have that. Speaking with recent graduates, my daughter being one of them, they all felt they were well prepared for science, college level classes because of the skills, the knowledge, and the things that they gained via the teachers, via the coursework, via the dual enrollment that they had in Rockland Unified Schools, right? As an example, and we have some kids here from a broadcasting standpoint. I know a few others that are, a few others actually that are at the Cronkite School of Journalism at ASU. They were well prepared because of the CTE programs in broadcasting, things that these kids are doing here now. Another neighbor is working in the trades, was well prepared for construction, HVAC work because of the CTE pathways, the work completed, the projects, thank you to Mr. Hunter, and the industry partners that help support our CTE programs. So, with special ed, the goal is to have those graduates well prepared for their future endeavors. Individual education plans are the starting point in that goal setting. Reviewing and assessing those growth and that progress creates the opportunity to review the expectations from the parents, from the students, and the teachers. Right? So as a board member, we want to support the budgets, the programs, and the education that prepares our students of Rockland Unified to be well prepared for their career, the college, and their next steps upon graduation and after any course completion. That's it.
Carrie.
Like I said in my intro, intro that learning loss is definitely one of my top priorities. Our students lost out on a significant amount of foundational knowledge during distance learning. Last year I polled about 15 of my daughter's friends in their math classes, and not one was passing math, and these were normally A and B students. When I talked to the admin, they made it clear they were aware of the issue and they were working to adjust the curriculum. And when I heard that, my thought is, are you adjusting it so that they can be at the standard? We're lowering the standard to meet these kids now. Why don't we keep the standard what it was 2019, give them the interventions necessary to catch them up so that we're all at that same plan that Rockland's known for. Let's be the premier district we've always been known for. District has already been approved $1 million for learning loss recovery. If elected, I will press hard to get this allocated to more instructional aides at the elementary level, because they also are having it in a little bit of a different way. Additional tutoring time for middle and high school students, and I would like that additional time to be held in the evening so that even kids with extracurricular activities right after school, they're still able to get that support and be involved students. As far as special ed students, I've talked to several parents and special ed teachers, and what I'm hearing is, and I mean, I have an IEP child myself, it's hard to understand. I think Michelle said it, you don't know. You have a baby and you think that you just raised the baby, and that nobody says, okay, now they have dyscalculia, they have dyslexia, they have autism. You don't know how to navigate that. You don't know how to get an IEP. So in educating our parents on what does that look like, how do you get that, it's not an overnight process. Those testing takes, I mean, it could take one kid 15 minutes to get through one exam, or it can take hours. I also want to create a synergy between the general ed teachers, the special ed teachers, and the parents, so that all of them are working together for the benefit of the students. We need more aides for special ed. That's all part of this learning loss, and for our IEP kids, it's even harder for them to catch up and be on even to what their goals are, to meet their goals. And then funding. I talked to one special ed student or a teacher. She gets $100 for her autistic class. $100 isn't enough.
Rick?
We're going to bookend this one because I'm going to sort of end where Tiffany started, because I agree. The way I think about this is really about personalized learning, and I share that desire. And I think in Rockland we have a high-performing school. We have wonderful schools, but it doesn't work for every child. And we need to think about how we reach every child where they are. And exactly right. Some need to accelerate the phone, some need to be intervened with. And so we've made a huge investment in Rockland around intervention. We have learning recovery teachers in every single school in our district, and it's a great learning opportunity for us. Now, I will actually say, I totally agree with the learning loss, but I actually don't like the idea of learning recovery. I want to change the name of it because it's actually good instruction. It shouldn't go away when we get through learning loss through the pandemic. There are always kids that need extra support. So it should be a key part of how we run things in Rockland. We have, I keep saying tier 1, tier 3, we apologize, but both. You need good, high quality early instruction from teachers, and then intervention specialists to go with that. And so I'm thinking about how to do that. And I'm spending a lot of time thinking about what's working and what are we learning about. So we have generally 8 intervention specialists in every single school, but at Corey Trails, they actually didn't hire a specialist. They're taking 2 teachers, pulling them out of the classroom, and having 8 support them. At Parker and Whitney, they're trying something like a hybrid of that too. So I'm spending time in these classrooms trying to learn where it's working and what do we know about that? What do we know about what works and what works best? Because we are going to have a very, very hard decision when this funding runs out, and it's going to run out. Because I think the data is clearly showing me this investment has to continue. We cannot be done with this investment, but where are we going to make difficult cuts as a result, and what's the best way to organize it based on what we're learning? And so it's important now to spend time looking at it, understanding and learning where the high quality is, so we make sure we protect that going forward. And then in special ed, the one thing I'll say real quickly, I hope I'll get another chance, is that one of the biggest differences we have is the difference between compliance and high quality learning. We have to comply. If we don't, we get sued. It's hugely problematic legislatively. We have to focus on how we improve and how we learn. And sometimes they're actually within tension with each other, and that's the one thing we have a new program that's going to help a lot. Sorry.
Okay, Michelle, our next question is, after a period of contentious contract negotiations followed by the challenges of COVID protocols, what actions do you see the school board doing to improve relationships between teachers and stakeholders? Stakeholders being parents, students, trustees, and the district office.
Thank you. So as a new board trustee, my first action item would be to start to build trust relationships with all of these stakeholder groups. And I really want to model the behavior that I would like to have in return. So being an active listener, being respectful, having empathy. An area of divisiveness that we've had over the last 2 years has been at our school board meetings. And that doesn't mean that that's going to go away depending on which board trustees are there. There are going to be contentious issues that come up from time to time. But what I found discouraging was that we had people from outside of our Rockland community, so not Rockland parents or residents or taxpayers here, coming in and really derailing the meetings. And this is where our district business has to get done. And in some cases, these outside individuals were getting more speaking time than the actual Rockland parents who were there with valid concerns, 3 minutes versus 1 minute. I don't feel that that's right. So I would want to make a change to that and say that if you are not a Rockland stakeholder, you're not speaking at our meetings, and you can email or you can write a letter or give a phone call, but we need to get our business done for our students here and not waste time. Be respectful of time of the board, of district staff, and of parents. So that's one area. I would also like to work with teachers. I had the ability to go to a site rep meeting recently and ask them, what's on your mind? And one of the things that stuck with me was that teachers really want to be involved in decisions that affect their day-to-day job from the ground up. So really making sure that the district is working teachers, getting their expertise and their perspective and actually using that and weighing in on that when decisions are made. I think that that's very important. And then to kind of circle back to the meetings, communication and honest transparency with parents. Yes, there are going to be issues like this, but that was not the timer, was it? But a lot can be done if we are proactive at getting the information out. I think we all know that this information is available, but unfortunately a lot of parents don't understand that. So let's make sure that we're getting everything out there so that people understand what's going on, there isn't misinformation going around, and people can come in with all of the knowledge there available to them. And then we can talk about it. Okay.
Behavioral standards for meetings, which must include adhering to the policy about community members not using teachers' names or workplaces during public comments. In the current environment, teachers don't feel comfortable or safe speaking at board meetings. I want to repeat that. Teachers do not feel comfortable speaking at a school board meeting. That is absolutely horrible and wrong and needs to change. If you watch some of the school board meetings from last year, I encourage you to watch September 1st, 2021. You can see why. I and other parents read statements from teachers at meetings last year since teachers were concerned about retaliation and harassment. And as we saw what happened to a Granite Oaks middle school teacher who was harassed by a parent last October to the point that she is on leave, we know that their concerns are justified. As a future school board trustee, I will uphold all rules and all policies and portray civil behavior. I will also continually communicate with the teachers union and with teachers before making decisions that affect their everyday jobs and responsibilities. In order to improve relationships and regain trust amongst all stakeholders, we need somebody who's trained in conflict resolution, counseling, and de-escalation strategies. I am that person who listens to people and who can empathize with their concerns. If you take a look at my website, I am proud of the fact that my endorsements are from educators, parents, and a lot of my former students that I had over 10 years ago and we're still in touch. That shows, that is one example of how I establish rapport and relationships with people. Even if we don't agree, people can say that I am genuine, I am dedicated, and I will help foster those relationships that have been broken the past 2 years. Thank you.
Stakeholders in student success. So you've got parents, you've got students, you've got principals, supervisors, leaders, board members, you've got teachers, maintenance staff, custodial, and all that staff. All of those folks from all those different parameters are here to really achieve student success. To get those kids, the student focus should be number one. All those parties need to talk, review expectations, discuss priorities, and figure out what's the best for the kids at this moment, what's the best for the students, how are we going to get the kiddos to the next level. In the past, 2018, 2019, when Rick and I were first elected, we were almost at a strike, and no one wins there. In 2022, we worked together, opened up, reviewed the financials, reviewed the financial models, all the assumptions, communicated expectations back and forth, reviewed budget priorities, reviewed prior decisions. We worked together. It was a shared responsibility. Those contracts were all agreed upon in May, and everyone who owns this, and it worked out very well. We're in a good situation here. And we need to continue to improve on that and keep that momentum moving forward. We need to improve in-person communication so that ideas, expectations can be discussed. Just like in-person education, we all need to talk and work with each other. We need to state our goals, our expectations, so that we can all be a part of the solution that balances the priorities with the policies, and we can all continuously improve our communication and make this and continue to have Rockland as a great place to raise kids and educate kids in our schools.
Karen.
It has indeed been a tumultuous few years in our district, but there's always calm after the storm. If elected, I will do everything in my power to create a win-win relationship with teachers, parents, and the board. I spent a considerable amount of time reaching out to teachers in the district asking, what is your current relationship with the board? What would you change if you could? The answer repeated was teachers want to be heard. They do not want to be told what to do. They want to be asked how the board can make their job effective. Our district is only as good as our teachers. If our teachers feel that they are just pawns in a political game, the level of respect needed for a dynamic relationship will not be able to happen. Teachers want board members to be in the classrooms to see how the decisions that they are making are affecting teachers and students. I plan to make it a point to visit schools and hear from those with boots on the ground how we can make our schools a better place to teach and learn. As for the relationships with parents, a trustee needs to be approachable and available. Parents know firsthand how their student is doing academically and mentally. They are also the primary decision makers in their children's lives. Parents should absolutely know what is going on in the classrooms. I would love to see parents team up with teachers to give their children the best educational experience possible. The board should be the one ensuring both parents and teachers have the tools necessary to ensure the success of the students. At the end of the day, we all have the same goal in mind, the success of Rockland students. We look perspectives and have respectful discussions in order to come to agreements I'm so cold, I'm shivering is what's happening, as how to best keep Rockland the premier school district it has always been.
Rick.
So I'll answer this question by telling you what I did, because I think it's indicative. So 4 years ago when I ran, we were at about the lowest point we've been with our teachers. We were just short of a strike. It was very, very ugly. I ran on the idea of healing the relationship was the main point I ran on. And as soon as I got elected, I went to work. And it wasn't easy. I spent hours and hours meeting with teachers, meeting with the admin, trying to understand where we were not working. I took my background in interest-based problem solving and talked about how we can find common interests and work to get better. We formed a labor management committee that I was instrumental in both forming and thinking about how to pull it together to make sure we were actually talking about real problems that exist in our thing and then how we could overcome them together. And then I talked to superintendents throughout the state and I talked to labor leaders throughout the state to try to understand where it had been done better, where people made this work. And we identified some, and we even went with the teachers and visited one of the districts we identified to sort of understand what worked. And it was that long, slogging, relationship building, spending time building trust back that resulted in this last year, the earliest contract adoption in the history of Rockland, unanimously adopted by the teachers and the board. It didn't just happen. It didn't happen on the school board days. It happened by real hard work, hours and hours and hours of time building relationships back. It's what I did there. It's what I want to continue to do on the board now. One idea in terms of parent, this is a little bit tangential, but I want to say, one thing I've worked a lot at in my day job is what's called the graduate profile. And it's this idea of a shared agreement of what it means to be a high-quality graduate. In Rockland right now, we decide our graduation requirements based on what the state tells us to do, a certain number of English, a certain number of math. I actually want to pull our community together, labor leaders, business community, parents, students, and say, what does it mean to be a high-quality graduate in Rockland? What does the industry and Placer need us in? What skills do we need? And then let's make sure we're developing a way to make sure we're reaching those. And then be honest about it, show transparency so we know from kindergarten through that we're building towards these and we're working with parents so they understand where we're going with their education and they can be our partner in bringing them along.
Teachers, parents, students, trustees, community members all working together help students. When there's a disconnect, it's the students that suffer. We've seen this over the years, and so in my campaign, one of my campaign promises of 2020 was that I would increase communication and transparency. I did this in a variety of ways, and I want to highlight those in this moment because we have already seen in 2 years success from some of the things we've implemented and done. By working together with our board, we implemented board presentations on campuses with students. We did this surrounding our budget. We had tough decisions we had to make. That was during the last 2 years. We had very difficult decisions heading in to the middle of COVID that we knew we were going to have to make hard calls, and we did that by listening to our students, by talking to our students, being honest with them. We also did a board presentation on campus to students regarding the dress code. That was potentially a very divisive issue, and actually I appreciate that we were able to really tackle that in a way that showed beautiful democracy on our campuses with our students. Additionally, board presentations to parents. For one of the first times I was told, we as board members went out and said, we want to show you what we are looking at. We want to show you the budget, we want you to understand the budget, and we want to hear directly from you. Not just through an LCAP survey where we may not get to talk to you, but we want to actually show you what we're looking at, how much money, and if you had $100, where would you spend it as a parent? And that was incredibly beneficial in talking with our parents. Additionally, we reformatted our study sessions. Study sessions at Rockland Unified, most parents typically didn't watch. You probably didn't know we had them. And so we actually reformatted those and said, we're going to talk about issues that our community is talking about. We want to talk with our teachers. We want to hear from our teachers. We want to see exactly what's working in the classroom, because when we're able to highlight the phenomenal things our teachers and staff are doing, it builds relationship together. And so I really think the critical piece here is this community collaboration that we as trustees own. The responsibility is on us to build those relationships, to increase communication, increase transparency, and make sure that we are highlighting the phenomenal things that our teachers are doing and that we are listening and addressing the concerns of our parents in our community.
Thank you. We'll try and get as many of these as we can get in. We're running out of time, which is always the case. But Jennifer, our first audience question is, what is your stance on book banning? And if you support bans, what is your criteria?
So I think I already answered that, but I'll answer it again for the record. I'm against book banning in all forms. I'm against censorship in all forms because it is against freedom of expression. It is against what we say we believe in as Americans. We don't get to pick and choose what we believe in and then force those beliefs onto other people. That goes against everything that I believe in as a mom, that I believe in as an educator. So I encourage parents to have conversations about the books, have conversations with their student, have conversations with the teachers. So I know as a former English teacher, there's always been books that are banned. Ironically, those are all the books that I have on my bookshelf. Those are a lot of the books that I have taught because they had conversations that started. So we might not agree with the author, we might not agree with what's happening in the story or the plot, but I learned a little bit more about somebody else. I learned about a different perspective. And I believe that's what we're trying to teach our kids. So we might not agree with something, but we're opening up to another world of somebody else who, like I mentioned before, has a different upbringing than we do. So it's a very scary and slippery slope when we have outside influences of the American Evangelical Council saying to our librarians, who are public school librarians, remove these books from the libraries. Absolutely not. And there will not be any book banning in Rockland because I know hundreds of students and parents and teachers who will not have anything to do with that. So I'll end with that.
There are multiple libraries within, so same question?
Is to the audience to please be respectful. We've done an awesome job tonight allowing the candidates to express their views and wait until they're done, and when the next candidate starts, allowing them your full attention. Sorry about that, Derek.
No problem. So we have multiple libraries in Rockland. So we have elementary school libraries, classroom libraries, high school libraries, public library, and I think there's an opportunity for books to be put in at different places. A book might be banned or pushed out a little at a different level. Like you have a different expectation for an elementary school kid that you do have for a high school kid or a college kid. There's public libraries also. So what I think there's an opportunity for parents to have the conversation, for parents to have an expectation, talk with the schools, talk with the places. There are some places that books should be, and there's some places that some sensitive topics shouldn't be, just because it's not age appropriate. And I think having those conversations within our community, within our spot, we can create an opportunity to where we have books at the right places so that kids can get in there. Also, it's an open library, so if kids are very interested, they're going to reach out to it. We all know you can go to a public library anytime you want, you can go to a college library, you can go to Amazon, you can go to Barnes & Noble, and you can pick up any book you want. So there are those opportunities for our kids and our students to go and experience those things. I think it's an opportunity for parents and the kids to have a conversation. What is it that interests you about that topic or something? And that's the conversation that we need to continue to promote here.
Karen?
I just want to say, if you actually look at the books on the list that she's referring to, one of them, I mean, some of them are, I'm not in agreement that they're an issue, but some of them speak of masturbation habits. They speak of one of them says, put your finger in his vagina and taste it. I don't want that in my kid's library. I don't think that's necessary for me. I would encourage anyone that's interested in that article to actually look at the details in some of those books. There are excerpts that you can find online. And like Derek said, there's a place for those kinds of books. Go to the public library, get them there. They're not a place for them in our schools where any kid can come and choose them. It's definitely not a place in our elementary schools, and I really don't agree that it's a place in our high schools, because why would we have parents be allowed to sign out their kid from a sex ed, a sex education curriculum, but we can't sign them out of a sex ed book that they can just pull off of a shelf in the library.
Rick?
So I do think it's important to understand how this process works. And so we do have different libraries, but the books that get in our libraries are decided by professional educators, and they're decided by librarians who go through a rigorous process to decide what's right and what our kids need access to and should be able to learn. And they supplement our curriculum. And they supplement our curriculum in a way that is available for any kid, for students that want it. And it's been through a process that I support. And I support them making. And what I would say is that it still becomes, because ultimately, what I don't think we should be in the business of any government body telling parents what's right for their children. You should decide what's right for your child. I agree with that. With all due respect, exactly what you asked for, Carrie, that's the facts today. You can today say, my child cannot check that book out from the library, and they cannot. In Rockland, that is the current policy. We have a process that's exactly because we were thoughtful, we spent time looking it through, we made it make sense for Rockland. I've not heard anyone hurt by the books that are in our library today, and all of a sudden, this is a mass issue. It wasn't last year. We made it. We're okay. So, if it doesn't work for your family, if it's not appropriate for your family, I respect that. We have a policy to make sure your child will get nowhere near that. But we are dangerous close to you telling others how they should raise their child. And I can't say this strongly enough, that is not Rockland. It just isn't.
Tiffany?
Listen, I am not a fan of banning books, but I am absolutely a fan for listening and addressing parent and teacher concerns with age appropriateness. Our own State of California Education Department tells us to do so as board trustees. Use age appropriateness. Multiple parents and teachers have shared with me this very weekend concerns that they have about sexually graphic books that are in our libraries right now. And the systems that I communicated to them that I thought were in place, I said the very same thing. Oh, you are able. That's actually not true. At our elementary schools, a parent just had a situation where a book came home. They contacted the administration, asked, how did this happen? I was concerned about this. I had shared that, and they said that they had removed classifications from books. First graders, second graders, and third graders. These are young children. Elementary children are very different than middle school children, than high school children. A 5-year-old is very different than a 25-year-old. To use the excuse of they can access it anywhere, that is absolutely not appropriate for me. We are responsible for what our children have access to. May 8th, 2019, our own State Board of Education removed 6 books from their own health education framework. If they think it's appropriate and necessary to do so, by golly, it's appropriate and necessary for us as trustees to do so as well. Now, how do I plan to accomplish that? I plan to accomplish that with a volunteer committee group of parents. Right now, we do have a committee. People have asked, parents have asked, how do I get on that committee? They don't know how and they're not getting responses. I do believe it's appropriate for a trustee to then engage and say, if parents have concerns, they need to have the ability to be on a committee to review the books, share their concerns, and be able to opt out of books that they do not want their children having access to.
Thank you. No, I do not support the banning of books in our libraries, and that does, to say you don't support banning, but I do want to restrict. I thought that I was hearing a lot about parent choice and parent freedoms, and having books in the library that are not part of the core curriculum in a high school library with high school age students who have access to the internet. They're not, it's literature versus the internet. I don't know. I just think this is where it's a parent choice. By banning books, we are taking choices away from parents. By not banning books, you have the right as a parent to talk to your student about what is acceptable in your home, what you want them to read, and have that moment. And no, maybe it isn't easy, but as a parent of RUSD kids, I want my kids to have access to this. I'm a member of the Placer Library Advisory Board. I grew up going to libraries. I think having access to different perspectives and different information, whether or not you want to read it, is very valuable and it's very American, and I don't want to do anything as a board trustee that will put that into a compromise.
Let's keep moving. Derek, you will be the next question from the audience. There have been incidents of racism and harassment at RUSD schools. What role do you believe the board has in supporting marginalized groups? Do you have any specific views regarding LGBT student supports?
I think in all of our classes and all of our schools right now, we have clubs and groups and opportunities where kids from all different backgrounds, the tall kids, the short kids, etc. And everywhere you want to go with that conversation, they have opportunities to be in different groups and different clubs. So I think continuing to promote that, continuing to have areas where every kid, whether they feel part of something or not, has an opportunity to conversation, communicate with, is valuable. I think any one kid should never be marginalized, should never be discriminated against, should never have, for whatever their feelings, their beliefs, or any of that stuff. I think we do a very good job here at promoting that and having opportunities where kids can talk to each other, kids can talk with their different groups, and I think that's where the clubs, those activities, and those different groups, allowing those kids to communicate and come together, and they'll have those conversations. I don't think we have as many issues as sometimes people think, but again, love to hear and understand more as it goes, but I do not, again, Rockland is a great place to raise kids. We've seen that people continue to come here, and I think we will, with our current policies and conversation we have, we will continue to support that and allow those kids to get together, to talk, and understand all the different perspectives. Again, and I know I make the joke, if it's tall or short, you can go with age, you can go with race, you can go with height, you can go with weight, you can go with whatever. I think we just got to have those opportunities for kids to communicate and talk and work things out and communicate and figure it out. Hey, I feel this way, do you feel that way, and understand different perspectives and from different groups.
Carrie.
I think, exactly what he said. We should have, you can have the clubs, but I think the clubs need to be equal opportunity. Everybody needs to be able to do, should be able to have a Christian club. My daughter tried to get a Christian club. It's been denied. Got denied one year, couldn't get accepted the next year.
but all these other clubs are. So everybody needs to be able to have, you should be able to have your LGBTQ, you should be able to have your, I can't remember what some of the other names of the exact ones are, but everybody should be able to have their own opportunity to express themselves and should not be looked down upon. And we should be teaching our kids inclusion in that and to be accepting of all of the different, of everybody. I mean, it's just like, the ethnic studies thing. Everybody needs to learn about all the different ethnicities, how they all work together, how we can all work together to make our schools amazing.
Rick?
So I really appreciate the question. I think it's very important that we have honest, open dialogue about this. Let's be clear, racism is not unique to Rockland, but racism is not vacant from Rockland either. We know this because we've seen it. We've seen horrible incidents of graffiti in our campuses and flags flying on our campuses. But more importantly, the way to see it is talk to our students. We have data to show there's a problem in our schools and that all kids are not going to be equal in the way they're treated in our schools. And you see this in an LCAP survey that says African American kids are more likely to contemplate suicide in our schools than white kids. That's just a fact. And as a board of trustee, I can't look at that and say we're good. We just need more clubs. We need to do something else. We need more than we need to be honest about a real problem here in Rockland and in our society. I will also say I had a really hard experience. We were at a student meeting, actually here at Rockland High, and the kids were sitting in a circle, and it so happened that kids of color were sitting on one. It didn't so happen. The kids of color were sitting on one side, and the white kids were sitting on the other side. And the question was, do we have racism here at Rockland? And every white kid said no, and every kid of color said yes. So it's our obligation as leaders to be there for our children. And if we're hearing race is playing a role in the way they are perceived on campus and their ability to be successful on campus, then we have to acknowledge that, and we have to work to overcome it. It's a long road. There's lots of work we have to do. It starts by actually seeing kids, seeing themselves in our curriculum. It starts by seeing themselves in our staff and our thing, and us being supportive, and most importantly, being able to loudly and clearly speak out that racism has no place in Rockland, and we will allow nothing but it is zero tolerance. If you use racist language, if you use racist graffiti, there will be consequences, and that is the minimum place to start as a district.
Tiffany?
My job as a trustee is to ensure every student has equal access to high-quality education in a safe learning environment. We write that out, we say it over and over and over, but the reality is, what actions do we take? And I hear that. I hear concern, I hear varied responses already from the group up on this table. I will say, looking at past experiences, as a foster parent, as an adoptive parent, as a leader in our community working with foster and adoptive families, I have found every family does not look the same. Every student does not look the same. And the reality is that means their experiences are not the same. So I do believe, and I hear the concerns, that there are students that may say, I have not experienced XYZ, but there are students sitting right next to them that might say, I experienced those very same things. We had an incident where a student from one of our campus clubs reached out and said, would a trustee be willing to talk to us? I said, would we be willing to talk to you? Yes. And so myself and another trustee hopped on that Zoom call and said, what's going on? How can we help? It was the Black Student Union at Whitney High, and there were some concerns that they had, and they wanted to share them. And it was actually, as heartbreaking of a conversation it was at first, it was actually really powerful for us to be able to talk, hear the concerns, and then ask, what can we do? But then also follow through on those actions. There were some requests that were made of us as trustees, and I will tell you, I followed through on those requests. And then circled back and said, have you seen a change? Has there been a marked change? The reality is, we do have students with very real concerns, and it's appropriate for us as trustees to make sure that we have resources for them, that there are supports for them. It was said up here, we have zero tolerance. I've said that at board meetings. I will say it over and over and over again. I have zero tolerance for any form of bullying, intimidation, or harassment. At a student level, at an adult level, there is a very real difference between providing resources for students and not providing resources for students. And so my priority is to fund resources for students. That is the reason why we expanded Breaking Down the Walls. Breaking Down the Walls has met that need for many of our students, and I hope to be able to support more students with that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. So having grown up in Rockland, I will say that the Rockland schools look much more diverse today than they did 20 years ago when I was graduating from Rockland High, and that's a great thing. That was part of what drew us to Rockland Elementary, to the GATE program, was the diversity of students there, and also for our dual immersion program as well. It's very valuable for our kids to be around others who are different than them and have different experiences. The issue of racism in our school community is not a hypothetical. It does exist. We've seen it. And as a community, I've been very encouraged by how people have come out to clean up, to do chalk events. Roger Stock I've seen out there. Derek, I saw him out there. It's great to see everyone show up and come together, but obviously it's symptomatic of something else that is going on, right? And we need to look at that. I do think bringing ethnic studies in as an elective is a great effort toward this, to help people to understand others a little bit more and hear real life experiences from their peers. I recently met with a Hindu service organization. They have a lot of students that go to Rockland Academy schools, but they also have students in Rockland. And they're very motivated to help come in and provide education and teach about, different cultural practices that they have. They want to dispel, what they kind of consider to be misunderstandings. And they do experience overt discrimination in our community. And so, I would really be motivated to help with that. With the E&I events team that I've been helping district staff, come up with ideas for, we've been working on that, making sure that some of these groups that have been historically marginalized are being appreciated, and we can look at what they bring to our school community and our greater community around us. Rick mentioned, there is a disparity when you look at the LCAP results. Those data don't lie. When you're looking at things like, am I hearing phantom timers, or was that correct?
That was the DVLR.
Okay.
Jennifer.
So there's a difference between saying and doing. There's a difference between I believe this, I want this should happen, and actually doing it. And being representative of all backgrounds, of all cultures, and going to events like Juneteenth, and going to events like the AAPI event, going to Placer Pride. There's Pride Days at Sierra College, and so we as board trustees should be out in the community at all of those events, and not pick and choose, but be at as many of those events as possible. So that's about that representation piece, and representation matters. So I find a disconnect with wanting to ban books with LGBTQ characters and minority characters mainly in that list, but then saying that diversity is important and representation does matter. It doesn't when a black student doesn't see himself or herself in that story. When my LGBTQ friends and allies don't see themselves. And when they do see themselves in things that's made as a punch, like a joke, or they're disparaged, or they're ridiculed, or they're kind of like the sidekick. More and more we're seeing that diversity in books, in TV shows, in movies. But that's not happening if we're taking away that material from our students and taking that away from them so they see those different perspectives. So again, it's about walking that walk. It's about representation. It's about the fact of educating our students, educating our faculty, educating the administration, from everybody who comes in contact with our students, because we all have biases. Every one of us does. If you say you don't, you're not telling the truth with that. We all have biases. We all think something maybe that's a stereotype or a judgment. So we have to admit that, have those courageous conversations, do some racial healing, participate in that, and be willing to walk the walk. Thank you.
There's never enough time, and on that note, now is the time that we're going to move on to our closing statements. For these, we'd like you to keep them to 2 minutes or less, if you would, please. I believe, Carrie, you will be starting this off.
Well, first of all, just thank you all for coming and hearing us, and I know some of these are really hard questions, and I think what we can all agree on is all of us have the Rockland schools and our Rockland students in our best interest, and deep down that's what we want. And I just truly hope that moving forward in the next board, whichever combination of the three of us that it is, that we can all work together and be united as one in that thought, and hear each other and not judge one another and not be divisive and put your own politics aside, because the kids are not our politics. politics. They're our kids, and we all love our kids and want the best for them. And we have to put all the other yucky aside. I mean, to use a kid word, because we aren't going to get anywhere. We can't move forward if we're stuck in the political part of the past. And I think that we have a great community here in Rockland. We have great parents that are willing to work, we're willing to put into the time. I mean, people have even said, you know, what are you going to do if you don't win? I said, well, I've learned so much just from researching everything, just from putting myself out there and meeting other people in the community. There's so many projects that I could do, even, you know, not on board. So I would encourage you too, if you feel strongly about something and you're not sitting up here, there is still a way for you to make a difference. There's still a way for you to get involved. And I would just encourage us to all just work together, hear each other, listen to each other, and have grace.
Rick.
I really appreciate it. That was a great start, and I agree with everything you just said, Carrie. And so I also want to add my thanks to PTC, to Lisa and Heidi. Thank you so much. This is really important to make sure we have this, and I appreciate you doing it. Mike, thank you for your time. I'm going to watch Channel 3 in the morning. You're going to get up. You're nervous forever. And I also do want to Carrie's point, I actually want to thank my colleagues out there. This is not easy, and it's not fun running for office. And it's an important part of democracy that we put ourselves up. And this was, I think we had great places of agreement. We had places of disagreement. What you can do, you can disagree agreeably. And I think that's what we need to have, and that's what's important as we move forward in Rockland. What I'll say is, I started with why I moved here. And I moved here because of our great schools. And the reality is, to Carrie's point, they were great schools not because of politics, but because we've tried to educate and build great schools. In fact, if you want to look at it from a partisan perspective, in the last 30 years, there's never been a time when our school board had one party on it. We've always had multiple parties in our thing, because the focus is on education, teaching and learning. And that's what built our great schools. So why would we want to take what we all moved here for and not continue to invest in what made our schools great, focusing on teaching and learning? It's an important opportunity for us to do this, and I think we have the moment coming up. I would say, speaking for myself, that that's why I'm running. That's why I'm standing for re-election, and I believe, as I've talked about tonight, I have a record on compromise. I have a record of working with different people to make sure that we're focused on teaching and learning. I have a broad base of support, leading with classroom teachers. I agree, it's the classroom teachers that made our schools great. And again, it's not a coincidence that they're supporting my campaign, because they see it as a way forward to make sure we stay great moving into the future. So please go to Rick for Rockland. I have a lot of information about my campaign. I'd love to share it with you, and I appreciate it.
Tiffany.
I'll start by saying I know that we have a limited amount of time, but I do mean it wholeheartedly. Anybody in the room, I am more than willing to stick around. I'd love to talk, hear more. I really would love to see a process like this bring us together, not divide us more. However, I will be honest, there has been division. Campaigns do that. That happens at times. And so I do think it's a responsibility of a candidate to share with you who they are, what they stand for, and what sets them apart. So tonight, you've heard about candidates with experience in other cities, other states, some 15, 20, and 25 years ago. But my experience is local, and my experience is recent. My experience is the proven leadership I have shown here as a trustee in Rockland. If we learned anything the last 2 years, it's that our students, our families, our communities depend on our schools. I still remember hearing about a 4th grader who called in asking for help. She was home alone with her younger sibling because her parents couldn't afford to stay home and miss work any longer. They were both hungry, wondering if someone from the school office could come break them a lunch and help them with their schoolwork. I'm thankful we were able to get our schools open safely. It wasn't easy, it was tough, but it was absolutely necessary. I've been shocked by some statements I've heard from other candidates running. Statements like, parents can ask questions, but we're state funded. I've heard that allowing students the option to return to school full-time was political and unrelated to a child's learning. If I'm honest, I cannot think of another thing more central to a child's learning than a child actually being allowed the opportunity to attend their class. I've heard that RUSD has taken votes to break the law, but that is just not true. I have here with me a statement from our superintendent verified by our legal counsel that states RUSD followed all legal mandates. School board members who elected to represent their communities, to understand the difference between the requirements of the law and recommendations. I'm proud of our work. We put students first, and our data shows it. The reality is, 3 candidates sitting up here wanted to stay the course, to keep schools at halftime learning, to keep masks on young children, and to impose a vaccine mandate that has since been repealed. It's critical that you elect board members who will listen to you and your concerns. Thank you.
promised everyone we'd try and get out of here by 8. So, Michelle, your turn.
Thank you. So I will start off by just a couple things. I have never once said that I support a vaccine mandate for COVID, and there was a period of time in which the law was broken and the mandate was taken off before it was time. Staff still had to follow it, but it was a choice that was made. I believe, as has been done prior to some of these more recent decisions, that we in Rockland can set an example and operate within the law, but still doing what's right for Rockland students. But that takes collaboration, and it takes working together and not dictating one opinion that maybe covers some members of the community. Obviously, look at right here, we're very divided, but we all, or most of us, have students in Rockland. We are all being served by these Rockland schools. There has to be a better way. When I ran in 2020 on our Zoom forum, I said back then, this is not a place for politics, and everyone that was on there nodded in agreement. But what I've seen over the past couple years, and people have said even tonight, it's not about politics. It has been over the past 2 years. And so I want to be more clear this time and say, I will not bring partisan politics into our schools or into our board meetings. It's not the place. I know that we're all fed up one way or another with politics at our state level, at our national level, and it's hard because we can't do a lot about it. But here in Rockland, we can. We can choose. We have an opportunity right now to choose how we want to move forward as a community. It concerns me to think about another 4 years operating the way the board meetings have operated the last 2 years. I want to come in, I want to work for students, I have a vested interest, I will have kids in these schools for 13 years. I know that these decisions will affect Rockland students, and that's something that matters to me. So again, our district is great. We are doing so much for our kids, but there are areas of improvement. We need trustees that are motivated to look at those educational issues.
Jennifer.
So to be clear, I have 23 years of experience as a counselor and a teacher, both in Pennsylvania and here in California, including currently. So the role of the school board is to focus on education, and it really should be that simple. And what is the role of a school board trustee? Is it to engage in politics, or is it to improve academic outcomes for our students? Unfortunately, some on our current board are engaged in a frivolous lawsuit over masks, and worse, have allowed our board meetings to become a safe haven for threatening rhetoric by political organizations and hate groups. Leaders must do better. I'm committed to returning, the Proud Boys are a hate group. I'm committed to returning civility and sense to our school board, and how will I do that? With the 23 years of experience that I have in education. Our board must model good citizenship, and we need to return to civility. The past few years have shown us how important it is to have school board members who prioritize the best interests of our students rather than trying to score political points. As a school board member, I will respond to emails even if we don't see eye to eye. I'm a parent. I am running as a parent, as a mom, as an educator, and I would write to school board members, and I would hear from Rick, and I would hear from nobody else. That shouldn't be happening as a citizen of this town, as a parent. We should all be receiving that information, the same information. As a parent, I was cut off at board meetings that was here, referred to earlier. None of those things should be happening. So whether I disagree with you and you disagree with me, let's have a conversation. And those counseling skills that I have, that training that I have, will be able to do that. So I'll bring civility back, I'll bring transparency back, and I will bring this to what we need to be focusing on, which is education, and it really should be that simple.
And Derek. All right.
So again, thank you very much. Thank you, Rockland High School PTC, for putting this together. Thanks to the broadcast students for helping out in your support. And then thank you to the community for coming out tonight, for being a part of the process, to listen to all of us, hear different perspectives, and again, making a good, educated, logical vote that's best for you and your family. We want to improve communication. You've heard that across the board here, and I think we all want to do this, especially. We want to improve the communication for students, parents, staff, and community, so we can all focus on what's right for the kids. That student success, that Rockland education excellence that we all look for here. All of us, I would say current board members, hopefully all future board members, and even prior board members who've all been around, we're all open to communication. There's busy times, there's not busy times. I think any of us here, if you want to meet out, you want to reach out, call us, text us, communicate with us, let's meet up, let's talk, and let's understand what the true information is, what's really a priority, what the perspectives are, so we can, again, come back to true education excellence. I want to continue to support the volunteerism that we see consistently across Rockland from the community. I want people to get involved. I want you to come back together for that educational excellence for these kids. Again, as I've said before, and will continue to say, I want to continue to promote Rockland as a great place to raise your family and educate your kids. Thank you for your support. My name is Derek Counter. You can count on Counter.
Before we wrap up, I would like to give 3 thank yous. First and foremost, to each and every candidate who came here tonight, who agreed to sit, sometimes in some cases, next to someone who may not see eye to eye with each other, and in front of a room that was not filled with people that entirely saw necessarily their viewpoint eye to eye. And on that, you should be commended. This is how public discourse works. As the candidates have, I also want to give a thank you again to the Rockland Parent Teacher Club, Mr. O'Donnell, Mr. Speece, the crew here for putting this on. And finally, I really, truly want to thank you, the audience, for being attentive, engaged, and respectful. What happened tonight, is proof that civil discourse exists and that differing viewpoints can come together in a thoughtful and engaging way to listen to candidates give their views unobstructed. Therefore, voters can make informed decisions based on what the candidates themselves have been able to say directly to you. So to you, I say thank you as well. And with that, 8:02, I almost did it.
Do they want us to help fold up the